Like for me, everyone knows that I'm a Christian. Like I am very bold about my faith, and I don't care what people think of me. If they think I'm weird, if they think I'm crazy, that's fine. I don't live to please you anyway. Like you don't have a heaven or a hell to put me in. What's up? It's Johanna with God is Glamorous, where we learn how to live our best lives through Jesus Christ. And today we're going to talk all about how to be bold, how to be courageous, and more importantly, how to stop following the crowd. So as you are continuing to go about your walk and your journey with Jesus and growing in your Christian faith, you are called to be bold, you are called to be courageous, and you are called to be a leader. And sometimes that's not always easy. Sometimes that means that you have to go against the crowd and let people know when things are wrong. So in honor of Easter, I want to analyze Jesus' crucifixion and just take a look at all the people that were involved. And as I was reading this story again, I realized that there was a common theme. And that common theme was that a lot of people failed him. A lot of people did not speak up when things were wrong. And as Christians, we are called to speak up and to say when things are wrong. So before I began God is Glamorous, I was a lukewarm Christian. Any lukewarm Christians out there? I was one. Where I went to church, but I also still had sex with my boyfriend, that kind of lukewarm Christian, like we pick and choose what kind of things we want to follow. I just remember God tugging at my heart and saying, I will never give you full permission to teach my people if you don't fully follow what I say. And it just constantly put a burden on me. And eventually I went to the person that I was dating at the time, and I told him, I was like, hey, I just feel this burden to just wait until marriage to have sex. And I'm thinking, he's going to be like, all right, bet, let's do this. We're going to wait. It's going to be such an amazing testimony. But his response was, come on, Johanna, no one does that anymore. And oftentimes you will be faced with that kind of response. A lot of people will say, you know what? No one does it anymore. We can do it. No one does it anymore. And as a Christian, you are called to be bold in your faith. And just because no one does it anymore, just because not everyone is following God the way they should, doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Doesn't mean that you should not be that shining light and that shining example of what the world needs. And just because a lot of people are not doing a lot of the things that God says to do, doesn't mean that you have to follow them. Doesn't mean that you can't be the example or you can't be the leader, because God calls us to be leaders. So just because no one's doing it gives you all the reason more to do it. Be bold, be courageous, and stand up for God and stand up for what is right. So back to Jesus and back to his crucifixion. Let's take a look at the series of events that unfolded during the time that Jesus was about to be crucified. So let's start in the Garden of Gethsemane. So Jesus has his disciples, and then we have the guards coming to arrest Jesus. And before they arrest Jesus, this huge fight breaks out. And Peter decides to take his sword and slice someone's ear off. And after Jesus was like, no, stop doing that. If you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. Again, Jesus is standing up for what is right. Then we see Jesus literally heal the servant of the high priest, his ear. So it says in Luke chapter 22, verse 51, but Jesus answered, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. So the fight breaks out. Everyone's going crazy. Then Jesus actually takes the stand, takes the lead, and tells everyone to stop what they're doing and stop fighting. And then he heals the person's ear. So after he heals the ear, you would think that the guy would be like, hold up, wait a minute, this dude just healed my ear, it was gone, it's here now. I think we can really gather that this is literally the Messiah, because my ear was literally cut off. But do you think he did that? No. He still allowed Jesus to be crucified. He still allowed Jesus to be arrested, and he did not stand up for what is right. And a lot of people are like this. Sometimes they may see something literally in front of them. They are convicted to say something. They are convicted to tell the truth. They are convicted to do what's right, but they let the opportunity pass them by, and they don't take a stand for what they were supposed to do. And I encourage you that as a Christian, if you see something that is wrong, if you are convicted, to stand up and let people know when something isn't right. I encourage you to do so, because that is one of the strengths that you have as a Christian, is to be bold and courageous and to just be brave and say things that God has called you to do. It says in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, to be bold and courageous, because God will be with you wherever you go. So don't ever feel like you have to shy away and shrink back and to not stand up for justice, because God is always going to protect you. Then we see one of Jesus' disciples, we see Peter, and Peter is looking at the entire event that's taking place, and then a few people began to recognize him, and then Peter begins to deny Jesus, not once, but 3 times. So it says, about an hour later, another asserted, certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean. Peter replied, man, I do not know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. So we see that Peter denies Jesus 3 times because he doesn't want to be associated with Jesus. It was cool to walk with Jesus when he was performing all these miracles and healing the sick and the blind, and when he had all these crowds following him. But the moment that Jesus begins to get crucified, that's when Peter wants to deny Jesus. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, do we deny Jesus? When are the times when we shrink back and hide our Christian faith because we think that it's not cool? When are the times that we decide to skip praying for a meal because we're around a bunch of people and we don't want to seem weird? Are we going to be bold and courageous and say, hold up, wait, before we eat, we got to pray. It's going to take 5 seconds. Or are we just going to shrink back and, skip over it? Like for me, everyone knows that I'm a Christian. Like I am very bold about my faith, and I don't care what people think of me. If they think I'm weird, if they think I'm crazy, that's fine. I don't like to please you anyway. Like you don't have a heaven or a hell to put me in. Like why does your opinion matter? Like I'm going to be bold in my faith, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. If people ask me, oh, hey, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went to church. Like, oh, do you want to go out to eat? No, you know what? I'm actually fasting today, but thank you, though. Oh, you're fasting? Yeah, I'm fasting for God. Like, it is what it is. Like, I don't care what people think of me. Like, I'm very bold in my faith, and that's what God calls us to be. God calls us to be bold in our faith because our walk with God can change the lives of others. So please just don't ever shy from your faith. Don't ever feel like you have to deny Jesus. Just be proud of your faith, because it truly is an amazing and a beautiful thing, and it really is something that will not only save people's lives, but also bring people closer to God. All right, so after Peter denies Jesus, then we see that Jesus ends up going to Pilate, and they are going to Pilate to convict Jesus. So Pilate is faced with the decision to decide to let Jesus go or to convict him. And he gives in to peer pressure. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. So Pilate is faced with a difficult decision because he wants to either appease the crowd, and people are saying, you have to kill Jesus, or you're not a friend of Caesar's. Like, he has all this peer pressure. So he ends up crucifying Jesus because he doesn't want to cause an uproar. And I understand that all these things have to happen in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled and for Jesus to fulfill his purpose. But sometimes people are making bad decisions because they want to keep other people happy. So it's nice to make people happy, but you have to realize that when you are following God, you're not going to make everyone happy. When you're following God, sometimes you have to tell your new boo, hey, bruh, I'm not having sex until I get married. Yeah, that's going to make him upset, but it's going to make God happy. Sometimes you have to say, hey, you know what, I'll go out with you, I'll have 1 drink, but I'm not going to have 5 shots. So just remember that as a Christian, you are going to have to let some people down, but the reward is so much greater when you have God's favor on your life. So always remember that. All right, so we have examined the people that actually failed Jesus, some of the people that failed Jesus throughout his crucifixion. But then we also have the amazing people who stood up for Jesus and let people know when they were wrong, starting with Pilate's amazing wife. So Pilate's wife, she was convicted in a dream that Jesus was innocent, and she encouraged Pilate to not crucify him. So it says, when Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Do not have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." So sometimes God will put things on your heart to let people know when things are wrong, and this is exactly what Pilate's wife did. So it says, when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." So even though Pilate's wife said what was on her heart and she let him know what was wrong, he still went and did what he was going to do, and he still crucified Jesus. Even though he realized that Jesus was innocent. But sometimes, even though you are convicted to tell people when they're wrong or when you need to stand up for something, sometimes people are still going to do what they want to do, and that's okay too. But the best thing to know is that you cleared your conscience and you did what you had to do, and you stood up for what needed to be said. All right, and last but not least, we have another amazing person standing up for Jesus when Jesus was on the cross. So we have Jesus on Calvary, and then we have two thieves next to Jesus. So one thief is mocking Jesus, and the other one actually stands up for Jesus. So it says, one of the criminals hanging beside him scoffed, "So you're the Messiah? Are you? Prove it by saving yourself, and us too while you're at it." But the other criminal protested, "Don't you fear God even when you have been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." So we have two choices. We can either be like the thief who laughs and mocks at Jesus and denies Jesus, or we can be like the other one who admits our wrongdoings, admits our faults, and stands up for Jesus and just gives God the glory when honor is due. I'm going to give you 3 tips on how you're able to be bold, courageous, and stand up for things that are right. So the first thing that I encourage you to do is to stop seeking the approval of others. So it says in Galatians chapter 1, verse 10, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God, or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." So I don't care about following the crowd. I don't care about fitting in. I don't care about being the most popular. None of that matters to me, because sometimes when you follow the crowd, you end up getting in the wrong things. And I just stand bold in my faith. So that's one of the ways to be bold and be courageous and to not feel like you have to follow the crowd, when you realize that your job is not to please people. Your job is to please God first. So I also want to remind you to stop following the crowd. Again, as I mentioned before, the crowd is not always right. You cannot change the world by trying to be like it. So just remember that following the crowd is not always the best thing, because the crowd doesn't always make the best decisions. As a Christian, you are called to not be like this world. You are called to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that's not to say that you can't go out and have fun. Yeah, I'll go out to this party, but I'm not going to smoke weed. I'm not going to do drugs. Or, I'll go out with you, but just because everyone else is cursing doesn't mean I have to curse to fit in. Like, sometimes you just have to be able to transform yourself and just stand up and be different. You are called to be set apart as a Christian. And lastly, stand up for what's right. If you feel like something isn't right, if you feel like you have to stand up for injustice or stand up for something that is not sitting well with your spirit, say it. Again, it says in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, to be bold and courageous, because the Lord is with you wherever you go. So I hope this has encouraged you to just be bold and courageous in your faith, and to not always follow the crowd. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people think of you. It doesn't matter if they think that you're weird. It doesn't matter if they think that you're crazy. It doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that God is pleased with my decisions. God favors me. And when God favors you, your life will increase beyond your wildest dreams. Like, you won't even have to deal with the crowd, because you'll be so high up, they can't even touch you. So just realize that you were called to be bold and courageous and to be a leader, and God will promote you and God will elevate you every single time. All right? So I hope this helps. Please let me know if you have any questions. If you want to learn more about Jesus and God, definitely check out these videos here and make sure to subscribe. And I will see you in another video. Stay glamorous.